Hello, everyone. How's everyone feeling today?
Good.
Good. Yeah. Talk to me. Talk at me. I wanna
Yeah.
I wanna hear from you. I'm gonna give it just a couple more minutes, then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get going. My name is John Graves, and I am the regional strategist for Best Friends. I used to cover Virginia, but I handed that over to Jenna, to the much more capable hands of Jenna, about a year ago. Now I cover South Carolina and North Carolina. I do live down here in North Carolina. I spend a lot of time in Virginia, particularly in the Greene County area, as that's where my wife is from, so that's where we're at a lot when we're in Virginia. And both my parents are actually from Virginia. So, and then I spend a lot of time in Eastern Virginia because it's a hop, skip, and a jump from where I live. But yeah. So anyway, we're here today with the wonderful Diana, who is feeling a little bit under the weather. So she's asked me to kind of jump in. Um, if you are here for the continuing credit, make sure you put your name and email in the chat, or either that or email it directly to Diana just to make sure she can put in for that credit. So I'm gonna get started here in a minute. I'm hoping we have some time for questions at the end. If not, my email will be at the end. I'm always hoping to set up a chat and kind of talk through some more specific challenges that you might be seeing. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I'm also used to doing this in person and a lot of back and forth. So, feel free to interrupt me and we can talk through it a little bit more. So, what we're talking about today is mitigating feline nuisance behavior. Um, I am again John Graves. I am the regional strategist here, and that is my dog Fiona, and I live out on the coast of North Carolina. I fall on that sword for everyone living here at the beach. You're all very welcome. So what we'll cover today, we're going to cover return to field programs and some success stories. We're going to cover a little bit of the public opinion, the complainant's mindset, working with complainants, working with caregivers. This is something that I added actually when I started giving this presentation a few years ago because my background was in animal control and animal services, animal sheltering for about 13 years before I came to Best Friends. And sometimes working with caregivers was the most difficult part for our officers, especially considering there's always some history there, and then there's always just some reputation, even if there isn't history. Then we'll talk about resolving conflicts and site evaluations, deterrence and their uses, and then we'll provide some resources and hopefully have some time for some open discussion. So let's get rolling. So, when we talk about a community cat program, I like to talk about it essentially in these four pillars, right? We all know like trap, neuter, vaccinate, return is extremely important, obviously, and actually helps mitigate a lot of those nuisance behaviors. But sometimes when we're talking about a community cat program, that becomes like the sole focus, just the TNVR piece. And we end up losing sight of the community engagement and the resource management. And those two are so important because if we aren't transparent and we aren't communicating with our public, these things can kind of go sideways quickly, or people don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. And if we don't manage our resources, whether that's human collateral, trapping, veterinary services, money, obviously, then the program can also just go sideways really, really quickly. But we're going to talk today. The most important and the least cost effective to me, especially from an animal control standpoint, is the nuisance mitigation piece and how to help serve our public that are experiencing these issues without just like automatically removing the cat. Return to field and trap neuter return. Return to field is more of like when they come into the shelter and then we kind of process them through and then put them back. I believe RTF is a practicable service in Virginia, but I might be wrong. You might have to have that workaround. And we can always talk about whatever that is and how to find the resolution. And then trap neuter return is more of an in-field service, right? Where we're actually trapping them. People, usually from the public, are trapping, neutering them, and putting them back. And we see trap, neuter, and return to field success stories all across the country, right? We see them in resource rich and resource deprived areas, areas that have high access to care, areas that have low access to care. We see them in rural, suburban. It really works everywhere. It's just about finding the right pathway forward for implementation. So, like we've seen, TNR efforts in Harrington, Delaware, and we saw like a 98% reduction in the number of nuisance calls. That's one of my favorites. Once they're sterilized and vaccinated, and you start implementing these nuisance, the nuisance calls go down so significantly. And in Jefferson County, Kentucky, over 8 years, they saw a 42% decline, and 94% fewer cats were killed over the same period. Decline in emissions, excuse me. And then in Wichita Falls, Texas, cat-related complaint calls went down more than 90% just through the implementation of intensive TNR program, TNR campaign, right? So, and then also we've seen this target zip code here in Florida. So when we talk about community cats, what do we think of when we hear the word TNVR? Anybody willing to come off mute and tell me what they think of? I will start calling on people.
Trap, neuter, return, vaccinate.
Okay. Who do you think of when you hear the term TNVR?
I think of Cat's Cradle because we did 1,800 of those last year.
Oh, that's awesome. Tim, you're off mute, so I'm gonna call on you. Who do you think of? Oh, Tim, you're too far away. So a lot of times what we hear of when we think of is this person, right? Do we all know this person? I think we do. I met this woman multiple times. And so we just think of like basically like a cat hoarding kind of a situation. And we think there's only like one or two people that are actually feeding and caring for them. But we actually know them to be is that we know TNVR actually looks more like this. And it's when the whole community comes together. And when we start going out and we start door knocking and we start canvassing a little bit, we start realizing how many more people in the neighborhood are actually caring for and feeding the cats. Um, and that can really help shift the mindset of community cat programming for people. And we see all types of people from all kinds of different communities coming in to help them. So public opinion, national and local support. We know that typically support for TNVR is around 70% most communities. And then we see anywhere from 20 to 25% for lethal injection and then 7 to 10% in most of these areas against or for doing nothing, excuse me. So when we're out in the field, especially or we're having conversations, it often feels like that's the reverse, right? Where it's like 25% of people might actually want to support community cats and 75% are against them. Anybody care to come off camera and say why we might think that? Or off, not even off camera, off mic.
I just think it's because the negative voices always take up more space.
100%. Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And I always
Yep.
tell people, like the caregivers and the ones that like the cats or even ones that are like indifferent to the cats are not going to call you. Right? Like that kind of call and be like, "Oh, I love this cat. He killed 7 mice for me last week, and he's the best. And he keeps bringing me these presents. Or he's just cool to see, and we love to just say hi to him and whatever. Those people are not calling you. It's the one that are having nuisance. So it always feels like it's the reverse. So again, a poll conducted in Texas in 2023 revealed 80% of Texans support TNVR in their local community, with 62% indicating strong support. And then in Richmond County, Georgia, 60% of respondents agreed CCPs keep the community safe, and 73% of residents either like having the cats around or were indifferent to their presence. So again, we see this kind of all over the place. And then we have national organizations in support of TNVR. We're all pretty familiar with the NACA at this point in time, I think, the NACA support of it. If you're not, they have a great support letter out that came out like in 2018 or something like that. But one of the things I like to reference too, especially when we're talking to commissioners or we're talking to county attorneys, is the American Bar Association actually supports the practice of TNVR for a lot of legal reasons, but kind of a lot of it also boils down to you know, it's there's less liability in taking someone's cat and removing some parts and bringing it back than taking someone's cat and not bringing it back at all. So, how did we get here? I just added this recently, and this is something that kind of gives a little historical background as we're looking at cats in the landscape today. So cats have been domesticated for 10,000 years. In the 1500s, cats were employed as mousers by Cardinal Wolsey. And in 1598, we had our first cat show held in the UK, which included awards for Best Ratter and Best Mouser. In Europe, cats came, on ships over to the Americas, and they reportedly tagged along with Christopher Columbus aboard the Mayflower. In 1914, cats employed as World War One mousers in trenches and aboard ships, and they continued that service throughout history as official employees of the U.S. Postal Service. Um, and the trap and kill model that we've used for so long, we know actually inflames populations through unmanaged resources and litter rebounding. And so I think we talk about this a little bit more. When we talk about litter rebounding, we actually have studies have shown, not just in cats, but like in coyotes and in other wildlife, that if we don't actually manage the resource and we end up just going through and culling populations, then the next litter rises to meet the not only the resource but that level of expectation of loss of life, excuse me. So we end up seeing bigger and bigger litters to meet this resource and that expectation. And that's part of the reason why we've seen this in flames so big. Um, so part of the reason I talk about this is because not only have they been part of our landscape and part of our lives for so long, but we actually have trained them and employed them to mouse for us and to be part of that landscape with us. I'm going to go ahead and skip through these real quick and just move on because it's a little bit more of a back and forth typically. So when we're working with complainants, we have to first manage our own mindset. And one thing that we have to accept is that trap and kill does not work. It never has, and it never will. I say this all the time when I'm having conversations, and I will say I can point to a community that has been trying this for years and years, and nothing has changed, right? If anything else, they end up having bring in more cats and more cats every single year. We just kind of see that cycle. So as a professional, we need to start being more proactive than reactive. Because again, for years we've just been like, okay, you're having an issue, let us come trap these cats. Okay, you're having an issue, let us come trap these cats. And we never really tried to get out in front of the problem. We're definitely getting better about that as an industry as a whole. But it makes again a big shift in your mindset and how to approach this. Also, the community is used to the old ways. They're used to being able to call you and say, "This cat is bothering me. Come get it." We know that if we come take that cat, one and a half other cats are going to move into its place as long as that resource is there. So we have to really look at this holistically. And it's our job to bring them in line with what we as experts know to be the best solutions. And when the other thing to keep in mind is when we remove a cat to make one resident happy, we do so at the expense of others. They come to resent us, spread a negative perception of animal control. So the way I think about it is if you have 10 neighbors, 75 of them, so seven of those 10 are either indifferent or are already actively feeding and caring about those cats. And so one person starts complaining, maybe two people, then we're removing them to make those two happy, but then the rest of the neighborhood is upset. And again, we're not managing that resource. So we need to stop blind to ourselves, to the public, excuse me, and ourselves. This was a big one for animal control for a few years. And I think this has really died back. But for a long time, we would show up to trap a cat and it would be like thrashing around inside the cage and acting completely feral. And, we know the timeline for that cat, right? It's going to come back to our shelter. We're going to hold it for 72 hours and then we're going to euthanize it. But if the person asks what we're going to do, we might say, oh, we're going to take it back, let it decompress, see if it comes around, then hopefully it'll enter our adoption program. When again, we know more than likely that cat is going to end up being euthanized. And when we are clear of that to people and offer them a better solution, they're a lot more likely to come into line with us. Also, cats are generally safer outside than in the shelter. Once a cat reaches a shelter, they have like a 3% nationally chance of actually making it back home. If they get lost in the field, they have around an 80% chance of getting back home. So, the complainant's mindset. So once we've gotten to a complainant and we're in field or they've called us, their frustration has already pretty often reached the tipping point. They may have attempted various methods to solve the issue. That they might have gone online, Googled like, how do I solve this? How do I do this? A lot of times what they've tried may not align with the actual solution. And then they may demand action based on what they think is needed, again, on what they've experienced in the past. Like, just come remove this cat. But we know, again, that another one's just going to move into its place. So they may make threats against the animal or you in the way of contacting your supervisor or elected official. We always say to welcome this one. For one, if they're making a threat against the animal, most likely they're not going to follow through with it. They're just trying to get a reaction out of you. The people that are going to harm the animals, unfortunately, don't normally call you first. So just kind of keep that in mind and remind them that harming the animal is also illegal and we don't want to do that. Um, as far as contacting your supervisor or elected official, this is why we always talk about that communication chain too, and making sure everyone is informed as to what and why you're doing it, so that if the complaints do get elevated, the person above you knows what and why. Okay, so working with a complainant, number one thing is to let them vent. It is so important to let them get it out. And yeah, and so and also like just showing them empathy. This is a problem. Never try to argue with someone about whether they're having a problem or not, because even if it's not important to you, it's important to them, right? And they are experiencing an issue. Explain this is a common problem and that there are specific programs that exist to help. Calm them down by asking them where to see the problem is occurring and get them to move away from their doorway into the yard. Okay, so with this, like not only it shows that you're actively invested in solving that problem, that you want to see where the issue is, what the issue is, where the cat's coming from. It also gets them moving around, and by physically moving around, it actually lowers people's frustration, and we just get the blood pressure moving a little bit. So strongly recommend getting them out and moving them around. Some talking points, as we talked about before, studies show that removal doesn't work. Animal control has been trying it for years. More will always move into place, especially as long as that resource exists. This strategy is working all over the country in every type of environment. If you take a cat to the shelter, it's more likely that he and she will be killed. And it's really easy. I mean, for the most part, nuisance mitigation, especially on the nuisance side, is pretty easy. It's a matter of trial and error, trying a few different deterrents, and getting the right one in place. And it will again solve the problem long term. That's one of the best things we tell people all the time. Like, hey, I know you're having an issue. We haven't been solving it. We're here today to solve this problem for you now and forever, right? Like we could solve for this one cat by removing it, maybe, but then another one's just going to move into its place. So what we want is we want to get a deterrent in place to actually solve it for this cat and the next. And then also TNVR solves a lot of problems in and of itself. We kind of align this with pig farming sometimes when we're having these conversations. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever had pigs, but anytime you introduce a new pig, the whole hierarchy gets disrupted, and it usually only takes a few minutes for them to figure out who's where in the hierarchy, right? And so when this happens, a cat gets removed out of a colony, we end up seeing more fighting, more spraying, more roaming, because they have to readjust for the hierarchy every time as well. So that's definitely something to consider. And then of course, again, when they're spayed and neutered and vaccinated, we know that it cuts down on roaming, it cuts down on spraying, again, yowling, fighting, all of these things that really lead to complaints. So working with caregivers is again can be really challenging. A lot of our caregivers, in my experience, have really great intentions, but not always the best execution. And a lot of times it's because they are reacting to seeing a cat, and their only thing that they know to do, and the only thing that is in their is in their reach is food, right? So we'll see them go out and somebody you see a lot is, caregiver will get like a 25-pound bag of cat food, and they'll rip that bag open and they'll just pour the whole bag on the ground to feed 10 cats. And so what ends up happening is they're actually not only are they increasing the resource, but they're also inviting in like, sorry. So what they're doing is they're increasing the resources, which is actually inviting in other cats, wildlife, things like that. So, when I was an officer, we always carried the Alley Cat Allies Colony Care Guide. And that has like a one-page guide on basically like how to provide for cats. It's like one cup of food, not leaving it down for more than a half an hour, cleaning up your area behind you. And also the benefit of this is it helps them stretch their own resources, right? So now a 25 bag of cat food will last them a week instead of a day. And again, we're not increasing that resource. So find common ground and listen to their side. One of the best things about community cat programming is fewer cats is everyone's goal. If you are a complainant or a caregiver, everyone wants fewer cats. Complainants want fewer cats to come in and, cause issues, cause complaints, destroy property, these things. And caregivers want fewer cats to feed, to expand or take care of, right? Um, we just have to get to that goal appropriately and meet caregivers with their own resources. The other reason why we carry the Alley Cat Allies guide with us rather than something that said Dare County, which was my sheriff's department and my animal control at the time, or the sheriff's department, but anyway, my animal control at the time, was that we were meeting them with their own resource. So they didn't trust us. Like historically, our Dare County Animal Control had come in, we had rounded up cats, we had taken them back to the shelter, and we'd euthanized them. So that trust is broken with caregivers, right? That's why a lot of them would go in and feed at night and they would feed quickly. Another reason why they, end up feeding fast, is because they feel like they have to get in and out before they get in trouble. I used to always say, when feeding cats is outlawed, only outlaws will feed cats. Um, so anyway, so we would meet them with their own resource. They're going to listen to that a lot more than they're going to listen to somebody that says Dare County Animal Shelter on it. They're going to listen to somebody that says Alley Cat Allies or Best Friends. They're going to connect a lot more with that. They're going to trust that resource. And it's a great way to build your trust with them as well. So we have our Best Friends CCP handbook, caretaker requirements, are I think chapter 9. But it's scan to that QR code if anybody wants to grab that. And then we discuss the importance of managing resources. Again, by having a higher level of resource than that colony needs, what we end up doing is actually increasing the resources. So if you have a colony of 10 and you've got all of them spayed and neutered, but you're feeding at the amount for 25 cats, then other cats are going to move in to meet that resource, unaltered ones, right? Um, there's also a lot of benefits of complainants and caregivers working together whenever possible. So a lot of times when I was animal control officer, we would have like someone who's like, look, I don't want to have problems with my neighbor. Like, I know these are their cats, but they're getting on my porch. They're destroying my property. They're, urinating in my flower garden, all of these things. I just want this resolved, but I don't want issues with my neighbor. And then you go talk to the caregiver, and the caregiver's like, oh, I don't want to have problems with my neighbors. I just want my cats to be safe. And so in those situations, if you can get them kind of working together and talking to each other a little bit, then that's extremely beneficial. Is that always possible? Definitely not. This is a very heated situation sometimes where people are upset about their property and people are passionate about their cats. And so sometimes getting them on the same page really isn't possible. But whenever it is, it can definitely uh, create a faster resolution. But I also will always bring the caregivers in to help address the complaints. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next couple of slides. But I tell them that, caregiving is part of the responsibilities of caregiving is also making sure that the cats are safe. And by making sure their cats are safe, we need to make sure that the complaints are addressed, right? All right, so this is my favorite part. This is probably what I miss the most about being in the field. I used to love doing site evaluations and figuring out what deterrent is best used for what for what cat or for what problem, right? And I used to love doing site evaluations for that reason because you really have to match up the right one. And again, it's a little bit of trial and error. So I'd love to hear a couple people come off mute and tell me what deterrents they recognize and in what ways they've used them. Um, so anybody willing to do that?
I've used the electronic deterrents before.
Okay, like in
Yep.
in the bottom left corner, the
Yeah.
ultrasonic. Okay,
The like I have solar powered ones. Um,
yeah,
More for unwanted wildlife, but it works for feral cats too.
absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else? Cat's Cradle, are you guys using these at all? Or are you focused primarily on the TNVR aspect? You're on mute if you're able to talk. If you're not, I can move on. All right, so the ultrasonic pest deterrents, which is that bottom left, are fantastic. The most important thing about these is the placement, right? Because I'm sure, we've seen some of these reviews. Some of the reviews are actually really funny on Amazon. But like some people will be like, yeah, it didn't work at all. My cats continue to come along. So placement, or cat walked right up to it, and sometimes you have to adjust the setting on the deterrent. But then also, the most important thing is placement. So a lot of complaints that we get right is about cats jumping on cars. We hear that one all the time and scratching up the paint. So what people will do is they'll put one of these deterrents, maybe by the tire or somewhere on the ground, where the cat might be like accessing the car, coming up behind it, wherever, right? And then so what ends up happening is the cat walks in front of the deterrent goes off, and then they jump on top of the car to get away from that deterrent. So we're actually sending them up there to get away from it. And so, what we recommend in that situation is actually putting the deterrent up high so that when the cat jumps off there, it goes off. And these are really placeable, really easily placeable. You can put them on poles, on trees, really wherever, nearby, where you park. They're pretty cheap too. So they're like $30 typically. What I normally recommend is having a slew of this stuff in your truck for like a loan out program. So to start with a loan out program, loan it out for 30 days. And then people can buy them their own if they want to at the end, right? It typically takes about 30 days to break a cat's pattern, so that's why I recommend having them out there for that long if possible. And you may have some people that push back and they're like, "Well, why do I have to buy this? They're not my cats." And a lot of times those people, I'll ask them, do you have locks on your front door? Yes. Okay. Did the county pay for that? Or did you pay for that? This is just another level of protecting your property, and ensuring, again, you're not just for working for this cap, but for others in the future. So, some other things here, the Critter Ritter in the middle, they have like a bunch of different versions of this. It's like Snake Away for cats. It's a fantastic product. The only issue with it is it will wash out, in 2 weeks to 30 days if it's just in like a general area. I usually recommend like for like if there's a cat getting under a trailer, under a house, under a porch, using that for like a litter box or whatever. If it's a more protected area, then the critter ritter will actually last a little bit longer. And it's basically a scent deterrent that keeps them from wanting to go into the area. And then the motion detector sprinkler. So the Scarecrow, again, there's like knockoff versions of this that are like 30 to $40. I can't remember how much the actual Scarecrow is. I think it's gone up a little bit. But these are fantastic for like large areas and gardens. So again, what we're looking at is if you have one small area is, utilizing usually the pest deterrent, the ultrasonic works the best. But if you have a bigger area, I definitely recommend these ultrasonic or these motion detector sprinklers. What happens? They go off and they spray the cat, and the cat runs off, and they work really, really well. The ultrasonic, if you have like a small garden that a cat's getting into, or really one of the best solutions I've seen them, if you have like outdoor cats that are fighting with indoor cats through the window, like placing one below the window, or if they're coming up onto the porch from one avenue, if you're able to just put that right there by that porch, or if you've got them coming up to your front door, putting one by the front door. So placement is key, small, like more targeted area. And then up in the right-hand corner, these are the fence toppers, and they go out there basically, and they're really expensive, I will not lie. But if you've got like cats walking along the fence, they go really well for that. And they look nicer. So if you are in a richer neighborhood, for lack of a better term, and they want something that looks nice, you can get these from Lowe's. And basically, these cats don't like anything that's not like soft. So anything tactile like that is going to keep them from wanting to walk across it. And so the reason why we have the chair roller on the bottom is those can actually be cut into strips and placed on top of a fence like this too. It's a much more cost-effective version, and equally as effective as the actual fence toppers. And then lastly, in the other corner, we have what's the rolled mat. It's called a cat mat. And these used to be really expensive, but you can get them for crazy cheap now off of like Amazon, Tumi. Timu, whatever, not Tumi, Timu. And yeah, and they are so good for so many uses. They originally were designed to go under gardens to keep cats from like actually digging into the gardens. Um, and they are great for that, but then they're kind of one and done, right? The reason why I like them is you can use them on like patio furniture, you can lay them over cars, you can do really anything that a cat is jumping onto. Work especially well for like patio furniture. We used to get a lot of complaints about like cats going up and they eat at this neighbor's house and they come over and they take an afternoon nap on Sally's patio furniture, but Sally's definitely allergic and now she can't use her front porch. So if you can actually just lay these over your patio furniture and the cats won't get up there because it's just not comfortable. And then they're super lightweight, so you can take them on and off and as you're using them. And again, we're just talking about typically 30 to 45 days of doing something like this to break the cat's pattern because they're going to find somewhere else to go lay down. And that's the whole point of this, right? We want to deter them off of property they're not allowed to and help attract them to cat properties where they are allowed to be. So, as we're doing our site evaluations, one thing you want to look at is how is the cat accessing the property? Is the cat just coming through like one small hole in the fence, coming up to one part of the porch? Can we put the right deterrent there? One small targeted deterrent to keep them from coming on. And also, what type of damage is the cat really causing? Like we would have people that would call and they would complain about real damage, right? Like they would call and complain about the cars getting scratched up, patio furniture, screen doors getting tore up, like all of these things. Um, and then we'd have people who call because they like saw a cat. And that's a much lower priority if they just saw a cat walking through their yard, right? Doesn't mean we can't try to find something for them, but it is definitely going to be a lower priority. Also remember again, sterilization will reduce most unwanted behavior. And that kind of goes both ways, right? So if the cats like are, trying to get into the house because there's an unspayed cat in the house, can we help support that person to get their own personal cat fixed, while we're working on detracting or deterring the other cats? Yeah. And then what would be the best advice for the situation? Like we talked about, is it a large area? Is there a water source? Is the cat digging? Is it sleeping on a car, fighting other cats in the house? And the water source too is interesting. Like, I mean, I've been to houses where like, well, the cat comes over here and drinks water every day and then goes lays in the yard or whatever. So sometimes that water source is like a tipped over bucket and it's like, can we just move the bucket? Or like, I mean, I've removed old birdhouses in people's yards they didn't want anymore because that's where cats kept coming and drinking out of. Just things like that. Can it be removed for a short period of time, the water source, or long term, and keep them from coming over? And then continuously reiterate your understanding of their frustrations. Because again, it is frustrating. It is really frustrating if you are a porch person. I'm a porch person. I have my coffee on my porch like every morning. I love it. And I don't want to smell cat pee while I'm out there. Let's be honest. And I don't want to necessarily sit in a chair that's covered in cat hair. That's not my cat because my cat does go on the porch. Okay. So, and then what is attracting the cat to the location? Can it be eliminated or modified? Again, is it like a water source? Is it a food source? Like the number of people that are out there feeding their cats on the front porch, and again, like dumping a whole, a whole like 3, 4 cups for one cat, and just leaving it like fed all the time, leaving it like full all the time. Those people that are actually feeding the cats outside and attracting neighborhood cats are so common. We used to see this all the time, and we would talk to those people too about, okay, let's bring our food in. Let's get your cat on the feeding schedule. It doesn't take very long. They'll catch to it really quick. So can that be eliminated or modified? Is there a food, water, shelter source there on the site? And then how do we make the acceptable location more attractive? So there's always a feeder, right? There's always going to be a complainant and there's always going to be a caregiver. And identifying who those two people are goes a really long way in all this. And so the caregiver, we've talked to them again about like proper feeding, but also can they do a few things to make sure that the cats stay on their property and it's more attracted. I recommend having some cat grass, shelter up and access up off the ground. Shelter up like high and low is really beneficial whenever possible. Because some cats are tree dwellers and some are bush dwellers. Someone will be able to get away quickly and someone will be able to see what's going on all the time. Make sure there's food and water station. A lot of my caregivers also weren't providing water to their cats because their thought was, oh, they'll find water somewhere else. And that's kind of the issue. They do. They go find water where they're not really wanted. So help providing them that. We used to also recommend catnip, like putting catnip out, because again, if they're spayed, neutered, well fed, and a little high on catnip, they're going to stay pretty close to home. So. All right, minimizing conflicts with wildlife. So, this is another one we added recently. I will say Humane World for Animals has just put out some really great materials on minimizing conflicts with wildlife because, with outdoor cats, we are going to see some conflict with wildlife. And again, we don't argue against that. Our argument or our conversation always comes back to the fact that we all want fewer cats and that trap, neuter, vaccinate, return and well-managed community cat programs have been the most successful thing that we have seen in actually mitigating those nuisances and excuse me and reducing the cat population. So but for how to help minimize it is you can install secure feeding stations, excuse me, for wildlife, higher off the ground with dual exits, and whenever possible like a smooth skirted flashing or baffles to reduce climbing. This is something we see like for like raccoons and stuff too, right? So it's not just for cats. And then also placing your bird feeders, your bathers, and other like wildlife attractants 10 to 12 feet away from potential cat hiding places and feeding stations whenever possible. Eliminate unintentional sources of food. And this is just kind of a general recommendation for wildlife, is replacing bird feeders with native plants. And also well-placed cat deterrents, like we talked about. Fencing wildlife habitats whenever possible. And also mainly one of the biggest things is like whenever possible, keeping like the areas at least around like where the wildlife is coming in and where the cats are being fed, like mowed and well maintained. The less hiding places they have, the better. And perimeter cleared again around wildlife stations. And whenever found, just protect ground nesting animals until you can come up with a plan for them with your local rehabber. Um, yeah, and then so I'm gonna skip that again. It's more in-person stuff. So some additional resources we have, or we recommend, is providing preventative material with info on trap, neuter, vaccinate, return, and proper resource management. Again, that kind of goes back to either, we've got our colony care guide. Alleycat has theirs. There's tons of great resources. Humane World has great guides. Um, and these are really trusted sources to kind of keep on. A lot of places times we've seen like calls being referred to as CCP staff or a local TNR group is super successful. This is how Charmex started theirs out years ago when they did theirs here in North Carolina. Is all of their calls, every single cat related call started out by going to the Humane Society of Charlotte. And the Humane Society of Charlotte had someone on staff that would actually, evaluate the calls. They would perform site evaluations and help make recommendations, and then they would call in animal control kind of whenever they found it to be um, something that was going beyond a typical CCP situation, or they needed some assistance or animal control for other reasons. Uh, and it doesn't have to be that robust, like, but just working with your local community cat group or your local TNR group can really go a long way to helping resolve this, especially, we only have a few officers. Um, you want to make sure that you are expanding your bandwidth a little bit, right? The other thing I'd like to say too on that is like most of our officers, if you're doing trap and removal, you are spending a ton of time in the field just doing that. The amount of time it takes you to drive somewhere and pick up one cat, take it back to the shelter, then drive back out, pick up one cat, take it to the shelter, or even picking up two or three at a time. It's still a long time to drive out there and come back. A site evaluation and making these recommendations typically only takes like 30 to 45 minutes. It can be a little bit longer depending on the situation. So it really does actually save you. And again, you're working for the long term and not having to keep going back to that property. So it saves you a lot of time in the long run. And then identifying caregivers in the area who can help reduce problems. I don't think we have it in here too, but talking about canvassing, some of your problematic areas or getting your local TNVR to canvas. It's really easy nowadays with our intake, reports to really identify some like high intake areas. And having a local TNVR group or CCP group like start to go and canvas those areas, identify caregivers in advance. So if you have an issue, you know who to go to, but then also can start working in that community to provide resources and provide spay neuter to help, drive down that intake. Also, again, we talked about providing a deterrent loan out program. There's a QR code, I think hopefully still works. I haven't checked it a little bit. Instructional video for deterrents. You can find them all over YouTube and stuff too, though. But again, providing that deterrent loan out program goes a really, really long way. And getting people some early solutions. And then this is the Humane Animal Control manual that we have. We're like updating our resources all the time. So if you're not visiting our, network page regularly, I definitely recommend it. And then this is our version of like our Community Cats program handbook, which we can also get out there and you can find on our resource page. And that's it. That's all I've got. So we do have a little bit of time left for questions. If anyone's got any or anyone wants to unpack any specific situations, I'd love to do it. By the way, that's a small cat. That's not my cat, but it's my favorite cat on the planet. It's one of my colleagues' cats.
Don, do you know
New.
of any grant programs that could do startup cost for a loan out program?
So for a loan out program, yes and no. Like, we do a lot of regional grants kind of depending on your situation, and we do our annual our Rachel Ray grants, and that cycle
Uh-huh.
usually opens up like at the end of the summer.
Okay.
With that, the way to make it the most competitive is to make sure you're tying it to your local shelter, and really with any of them is like
Uh-huh.
tying it to your local shelter and how you're going to work with them to reduce intake by
Okay.
implementing this program. But the one thing I will say is like this is the kind of thing because the deterrents are relatively inexpensive. If you put it on your wish list and put it out there, a lot of times people will actually buy
Oh,
these deterrents for you.
great
Um,
idea.
yeah, so again, because they're relatively inexpensive, and again, another TNVR group or CCP group can work on that as well for you, for actually buying them and getting them. But yeah, this is definitely something that people are willing to donate.
And we just started a new coalition in our area. I'm in Winchester, Virginia, with the SPCA, and we just started a coalition with four other rescues, and we're working together to do TNR street by street in Winchester City.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, but we don't have. I love the loan out idea. While we're out talking to the community.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so we saturate each street for 2 weeks before the trapping, identify the caretakers, and then get them to the clinic. But we're only able to do one a month right now.
yeah,
But that's good. I'll put the Rachel Ray on my radar for the end of the
yeah.
summer.
1 month is great, and then I love that you're doing looking at the canvassing. That is huge.
Hmm.
The other thing, if you're not already, I'm also a huge fan, by the way, of coalition building. Any director I've ever worked with, that's like the first thing I say is like, if you don't have a rescue coalition going with your community where you're meeting quarterly, like get it going. Invite everyone that works within your community, not necessarily all your pool partners, but the ones that are in your community. That helps you identify opportunities, gaps, and also just kind of cuts down on like some of that negativity that we see between industries, between organizations in the industry.
Yeah, it's been
Um,
very well received publicly, which kind of surprised me, but it really
yeah,
has. Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. Everyone wants
yeah,
to see that transparency and communication. So,
yep,
the other thing, if you're not already, I would be working with your animal control to make sure
yes.
you're also identifying priorities.
Yes,
So,
they're
like,
on the
okay.
team.
Okay, perfect. So, but I mean, so like if they've got a nuisance situation that they need your help with, they might need you guys to help get some of those guys fixed. And it may mean bumping, some other like non-nuisance cats, to the next month, which, it was never any fun, but making sure you're definitely hitting those priorities if you're not already, for not just for you,
It's
Lavinda, but for anyone on the call.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody else dealing with a fun colony they want to talk about? No, no one is dealing with a nuisance cat colony in all of Virginia right now, huh?
This is Sherry with Cat's Cradle.
Yes.
So we deal with a lot of cat colonies that are a nuisance. And just like today, when I started talking to a person that was referred to us, they said, we just want the cats removed. And I'm like, well, we don't do that. The R is not removed, it's return. And she says, well, it's just costing me too much feeding them. And so just this is what I do, and maybe it'll help others. But I just explained to them that, it might be really expensive today, but in 3 to 4 weeks, it's going to be even more expensive because your population is going to explode.
Hmm.
And just let us come in, do trap, neuter, return. We vaccinate. They, of course, didn't want to pay anything because it's not their cat.
Yeah.
And I told them that I would fundraise from their neighbors, and then that always gets them wanting to donate a little bit so we don't contact their neighbors,
Gotcha.
even
Oh,
though
I
their
love that.
neighbors are just like everybody. And we've had a lot, they turned around, they accepted our help today. But typically, we don't reach out to people asking them if we can come out, but we had some space on our transport. And our trappers weren't meeting their numbers. Their goal is 40 this week. And so if normally people call in and get on a list, and we're down to about 500 in Augusta County, which is wonderful. We were up at 2,000 last year.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah,
But
there's never a shortage of need, and once you can, and so like, the other benefit of this too is that, especially when you're talking about funding, Lavinda, is sometimes you need to get a grant and then you use that grant to show your commissioners that it is worth the investment. We've done that in several communities, like Florence County, South Carolina. They are now investing like $200,000 a year because they've seen the response from their community and how much they actually want this help and how needed this help is and how beneficial the program is. And
and
also, good.
I would love to reach out sometime to you offline because that's one of my biggest challenges in Augusta County. We get $0 support from the county, but of our 1,800 cats that we did last year, about 1,000 were in Augusta County, and it's got to impact intake, even though they're not seeing that right now because they've just built a new shiny shelter and people bring cats because they think it's nice there. But that is my biggest issue is uh, people don't want to have skin in the game.
It's hard. I mean, you have to have these conversations, and I mean, a lot of times people too that are doing this are just responding to again to seeing the cats. They may not have the resources, they may not have the funding, but they want to help. So finding the way they can help too, like, and and just kind of talking through the opportunities. And again, I mean, I was doing this presentation once in front of a commissioner, and he was like, "Well, people that are feeding the cats aren't the one that are calling you." And I was like, "You would be surprised." And the animal control officer, the animal control director behind me stood up and he was like, it's the same. He's like one and the same. 90% of the time they're actually out feeding them, right? It's gotten out of hand, right? Or they don't know what to do next step, right? So helping them get to a manageable number. And again, like, you hit on it, like the R is return, not removal. And the reason for that is because we know, again, other cats will move in. So that
Right.
is why we want to hit hard on that return. And at least you're getting your own cats back and they're spayed, neutered, and vaccinated.
Right, right.
So.
But this has been a great presentation, and I just wish we all had more funding and more time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with you, obviously, right? But that's also one of the things I love about nuisance mitigation is it's relatively inexpensive. It's easy to source the actual deterrents, which are the most cost effective one a piece. Other than that, it's really inexpensive. You don't have to have access to care, and you can do this today to really start like, resolving conflicts for your public, which is to me in an animal control position, that's my number one responsibility is actually helping my public and resolving their conflict. But also it does, and in turn impacts your intake at your shelter, which gives you more opportunity and more bandwidth to provide more TNVR services and to also focus on that population that needs to come into your shelter, right? The ones that really need to be there. So,
Yeah, and this was really helpful because I'll give my call center reps the deterrents because many times the people are calling are not the people that are feeding the cats or the people that are
okay.
adjacent. So this is
Yeah.
perfect. Thank
I
you.
mean, and there's a lot of people that have like a lot of orgs that have volunteer response teams basically that will go out and do these site evaluations and provide some deterrence. I strongly recommend that. It has to be someone, it has to be a team of people that are very cool, calm, and collected. I mean, I say all the time, it has to be someone who's getting good at getting yelled at because everyone in this situation is a little bit elevated. People that are compassionate for cats and people that are passionate about their property are typically elevated and again frustrated and again they may have even bought an ultrasonic pest deterrent, but they're trying to cover 3 acres with one deterrent. So really finding in that that what's going to actually work for that problem is so important. So anybody else have any other things they want to walk through? If not, we can go and go. I will say, this number here, if you want to contact me, I'd love to chat more with any one of you. The phone number you cannot text. Don't try to text it. It's a Teams number. You can call it, leave a voicemail, but don't try to text it. You can email me at any point in time too, though. So fantastic. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, John. This was great.
And don't forget to send Diana your information if you're looking for continuing education. All right, have a good one.
Thank you.